The Great Ruler Episode 134 Explanation. The large pillar of light soared into the sky and could be clearly seen from anywhere around 100 miles. When everyone felt it, there was a dreadful pressure coming from that pillar of light. That pressure wasn't unfamiliar to them, they had sensed it from those Sovereign Realm elders in the Academy. Evidently, the person within that pillar of light had successfully broken through to the Sovereign Realm. On a particular peak in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Shen Sangsheng and Li Xiantong raised their heads as they looked at the direction of the light pillar with complicated gazes. That fellow is truly a monster. Shen Sangsheng bitterly smiled. There was a hint of admiration in his eyes, along with unwillingness. Back then, when he met Mu Chen, the latter was still being chased after by Mo Xingtian. But in just 3 years, that youth had already far surpassed him, taking the lead and stepping into the Sovereign Realm. Li Xiantong nodded his head in agreement, his thoughts were deeper than Shen Sangsheng's. After all, Mu Chen was just someone that had managed to take 3 of his moves with all his strength and felt that Mu Chen was only ordinary back then and wasn't a fitting match for the outstanding Luo Li. However, in less than merely 3 years, he witnessed how Mu Chen soared and dazzled. Right now, Li Xiantong had no choice but to admit that Luo Li's eyesight truly was good. Although when Luo Li left and Luo Qiansheng wasn't entirely satisfied with Mu Chen, Li Xiantong, who had witnessed Mu Chen's growth, knew that there would be a day when Luo Qiansheng will change his opinion of Mu Chen, just like how he did. That was the youth that could always produce stunning miracles. I'm afraid that Mu Chen won't be staying long in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Shen Sangsheng suddenly said with reluctance in his tone. After spending so much time, he had a favorable impression of Mu Chen. What about you? Li Xiantong looked at Shen Sangsheng. He knew that this man before him was filled with pride down to his bones. It was impossible for him to stay in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy forever. I will begin my secluded cultivation, in an attempt to break through to the Sovereign Realm shortly. At that time, I will roam around the Great Thousand World. Ha ha, who knows, I might be able to encounter Mu Chen at that time. If there's a chance, I will definitely have a spar with him to determine who will be stronger at that time. Shen Sangsheng smiled with blazing fighting intent and expectation in his eyes. Let's go at that time, I might be faster than you in entering the Sovereign Realm. Li Xiantong spoke with a smear of a smile on his face. Ha ha, it's not that easy for you to surpass me. Do you think you're Mu Chen? Shen Sangsheng laughed. Then, we'll wait and see. Li Xiantong smiled. His gaze was gentle. He had treated Shen Sangsheng as an opponent that could be comparable to himself and saw how lacking he was. As for Mu Chen, that fellow was simply a monster, so he had excluded him, since Li Xiantong didn't wish to have his self-confidence shattered every single time. In the main hall of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, the Northern Sea Dragon, Din Tai Kang, Mo Yu and the rest raised their heads as they looked at that massive pillar of light with gratification in their eyes. The achievements that Mu Chen obtained in these 2 to 3 years were extremely rare, even in the history of their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. That kid is truly formidable. How good would it be if he stayed in our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy forever? Hall Master Mo Yu couldn't help sighing. Being short-sighted will break the future of another. Northern Sea Dragon bluntly scolded with a black face to Hall Master Mo Yu's sigh. Being scolded, Hall Master Mo Yu wore a dejected expression as he said in awkwardness, I'm just casually saying. Din Tai Kang couldn't refrain from smiling from that scene, his eyes were a little abstruse as he said, Mu Chen's potential is very high and it's impossible for our academy to fully develop his potential. Only the vast Great Thousand World can be a stage for him. Therefore, even if his strength could rise while staying in our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, it is impossible for him to become a true supreme expert. Mo Yu, do you believe that the next time Mu Chen returns to our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, not to mention about us, even Brother Northern Sea could not be compared to him? Mo Yu's expression was shaken as he had never expected such a high praise from Din Tai Kang to Mu Chen. Northern Sea Dragon stroked his beard with a calm expression on his aged face. Unexpectedly, he did not refute Din Tai Kang's words as he knew that Din Tai Kang's words weren't impossible. That youth did possess a terrifying potential. The crucial point was that he had a firm heart to walk the path of supreme experts. unswerving determination, stubbornness and a firm heart. For real supreme experts, talents were secondary, and the crucial one was a heart of an expert. Thus, the future of that youth would definitely not be ordinary. Big Sister Ling Shi, as Big Brother Mu Chen successfully made his breakthrough. In the serene courtyard, Sana covered the dazzling light before her with her tiny hands as she looked at the sizable pillar of light in the distant sky. He should have. Ling Shi sat before the bamboo house as a stunning arc was outlined by her white dress from her Caesar posture. However, there weren't any guys to feast on such a scene. Ling Shi held onto a jade pot as she poured a drink for herself. She casually cast her glance at the sizable light pillar and indifferently nodded her head. Big Sister Ling Shi, why are you not worried for Big Brother Mu Chen? Sana was a little unhappy when she saw how indifferent Ling Shi was as she pouted. He has a stunning beauty to protect him by his side right now, so there's nothing for me to worry about. Ling Shi said indifferently. Oh Tilda, Sana sat before Ling Shi with her eyes narrowed from her smile as she dragged her tone and chuckled. So Big Sister Ling Shi is jealous of that beautiful big sister. She's very beautiful. Ling Shi stared at Sana as a dangerous arc rose on her lips. As beautiful as Big Sister Ling Shi. No, I mean Big Sister Ling Shi is more beautiful. Sana accidentally blurts out, but when she saw Ling Shi slightly raising her brows, she immediately changed her words upon sensing a bad premonition. HMPH, Ling Shi lightly snorted as she raised her cold face and stared at the light pillar made of spiritual energy that stood towering between the heavens and earth and gritted her teeth. Back then, when he was going into seclusion, she even took the initiative to ask if he needed her help to protect him. However, she was actually refused by that fellow. That's simply detestable. Sana sneaked a glance at Ling Shi and was confused in her head as well. Although Big Sister Ling Shi was cold when she treated others, she had a good heart. Back then, she got along with Big Sister Luo Li pretty well, so why is she so opposed to Big Sister Nine Nether? It was said that in the Goddess Luo Association, Big Sister Ling Shi and Big Sister Nine Nether were the most popular mature ladies. Although she didn't quite understand what that was about. When Sana's brain was running wild with thoughts, Ling Shi stood up as she looked at the sizable light pillar. In her eyes, there was a smear of gratification and pride. He is indeed Aunt Jing's son. Perhaps in the future, he will become as outstanding as Aunt Jing. When that day comes, Ling Shi felt that she might even uncontrollably fall for him. The instant she had that thought, Ling Shi's face grew red as she quickly dismissed that thought. The light pillar that pierced the heavens and earth lasted for a few minutes, before it gradually faded away. When the light pillar faded, two light rays streaked across the horizon and appeared in the air of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy in a flash. Every single student shifted their gazes over and saw a youth standing on the air. His appearance was still the same, even that robust spiritual energy fluctuation around him had entirely dissipated. If it wasn't for his bearing when he stood in the air, everyone might think that he failed his breakthrough. Nine Nether stood beside Mu Chen. Compared to Mu Chen, she attracted even more attention. Her slender figure was a little tall, her fair neck was as graceful as a swan, and her exquisite collarbone drew a gentle arc. Especially the pair of long legs of hers that pulled the souls of others. Her slender eyes were filled with wildness that was flowing through, which made others understand that conquering such a woman was even harder than ascending to the sky. Mu Chen looked at the countless gazes coming from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy as he faintly smiled. He breathed out with satisfaction and slowly clenched his fist. He could sense the volcanic surges of terrifying spiritual energy in his body. The strength of that spiritual energy wasn't something that could be compared with third-grade spirit disaster. Right now, with a flip of his hand, he could probably suppress a few hundred third-grade spirit disaster experts. It was a gap that could not be filled with numbers. That power was just purely based on spiritual energy. When Mu Chen had successfully cultivated a sovereign celestial body in the future, his might would be even more terrifying. What intoxicating power! Mu Chen was intoxicated in the feeling for a brief moment before he recovered himself and headed towards the main hall along with Nine Nether. Ha ha, congratulations, Mu Chen. Seeing the arrival of Mu Chen, Hall Master Mo Yu and the rest smiled. Mu Chen quickly cupped his hands, and his gaze hesitated for a brief moment as he looked at Din Tai Kang. Speak if there's anything you wish. Why are you so modest? Seeing his reaction, Dean Taikang gently said with a light smile. Dean, I want to use the mirror of judgment of the 5 great academies. I wonder if that is possible. Mu Chen was a little nervous as he looked at Dean Taikang and cautiously spoke. This matter was too vital for him, and if it wasn't possible, it would indeed be hard for him to search for the immortal catalogue. Clearly, Mu Chen's request had taken Dean Taikang off guard as his face gradually turned heavy with his brows knitted together. Seeing his reaction, Mu Chen's heart involuntarily sank. Borrowing the mirror of judgment? Hearing Mu Chen's request in the main hall, the brows of Dean Taikang and the rest frowned, and only after a long time did they look at Mu Chen and said, the mirror of judgment is controlled by the 5 great academies. It's impossible to use it with just the agreement of one academy. Therefore, we would need to get a vote of all 5 deans of the 5 great academies before using the mirror of judgment. Only with at least 3 votes can we use the mirror of judgment. Mu Chen scratched his head as he bitterly smiled. He naturally knew that it was not an easy task to use the mirror of judgment, but this was his only choice to get any news of the immortal catalogue. Among the 5 great academies, the Saint Spiritual Academy will probably not agree to it, but we can fight for the 3 other academies. Northern Sea Dragon, who had not spoken from the beginning, opened his mouth. I'll make a trip to the 3 other academies. I believe they will give this old man some face. Dean Taikang and the rest were startled by his words. The Northern Sea Dragon rarely interfered in the matters of the academy. They couldn't imagine that he would actually do this for Mu Chen. Mu Chen was also stunned as he gratefully looked at Northern Sea Dragon. Thank you, Senior Northern Sea. He knew that it was a tough matter for an Earth Sovereign to come out, and with the pride of Northern Sea Dragon, it was probably rare for him to take the initiative to pull relations. However, Mu Chen did not reject, as he knew that with the Northern Sea Dragon's personality, if he were to refuse his favor, this isolated old man would immediately not care about him. Thus, he could only remember this favor in his heart at this moment. If it wasn't for your achievements in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament, I'm afraid that it would be hard for the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy to continue holding onto the title of the 5 great academies. Compared to that, this is nothing for an old man like me to show my face. Northern Sea Dragon looked at Mu Chen with a rare smile revealed on his lips. I am a member of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, be it now or in the future. Mu Chen lightly smiled. Good, with those words of yours, it's worth me pulling my face down. Northern Sea Dragon revealed a gratified smile on his face as he waved his hand at Dean Taikang and the rest. I will make a trip to the 3 academies now, the rest of you will remain in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Mu Chen, wait for my news. As he finished speaking, Northern Sea Dragon strode forth, space distorted before him, and shortly after, a spatial crack was ripped open as he went in and instantly disappeared. Looking at the swift and decisive Northern Sea Dragon, Mu Chen felt grateful in his heart. Okay, you'll remain in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy and wait for the news. Dean Taikang patted Mu Chen's shoulder and pondered for a brief moment before he continued speaking. After this matter, you intend on leaving the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, right? Mu Chen lightly nodded his head. That's for the best. If you continue to remain in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, there will be a limit to your cultivation. The Great Thousand World is more suitable for you. Dean Taikang smiled, but remember the words I said before. As long as you do not commit any actions that will bring down the Academy, you are always a student of our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. No matter what troubles you have incurred in the outside world, as long as you return to the Academy, our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy will not let anyone bully you. Mu Chen glanced at the gratified smile on Dean Taikang's face and felt touched in his heart. He did not say any other words, only heavily nodded his head. This was a place that he would always remember. Dean Taikang conversed with Mu Chen for another short while, before letting him leave. Mu Chen brought along 9 nether as he headed towards Lingshi's serene courtyard. Entering the courtyard, a girl was seated before the bamboo house as she drank some tea. When the latter saw Mu Chen's arrival, she let out a faint smile, but when she saw 9 nether, who was behind him, her brows had undetectably risen. Congratulations, you have finally become a sovereign expert. Lingxi smiled. Mu Chen smiled as well as he sat before Lingxi. Facing the beautiful girl before him, Mu Chen hesitated for a brief moment before saying, "Big Sister Ling Shi, I will leave the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy very soon." The hand which Ling Shi used to pour tea trembled as she gave Mu Chen a glance, before nodding her head. "Big Sister Ling Shi, are you coming along with me?" Mu Chen said in a soft voice. Ling Shi remained silent for a long time before shaking her head. "After your departure, I will also leave the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. But I will not be following you. I have other matters to attend to." "Other matters?" Mu Chen was stunned. He looked at Ling Shi, who was biting her rosy lip, as he wrinkled his brows. "You're going to find my mother." Ling Shi nodded her head as her face became slightly cold. "My memories have been sealed for a long time. But I can still vaguely sense broken memories, so I intend to go search for her by myself. No matter what, I have to know where Aunt Jing was taken to." "No, it's too dangerous for you to go alone. If you want to go, I'll have to go with you." Mu Chen's face slightly changed as he spoke in a stern voice. Although he had not come in contact with that mysterious clan, he could sense how terrifying they were. His mother's strength was comparable to a heavenly sovereign, and even so, she was confined, and Ling Shi's strength was only equivalent to a fourth-grade sovereign. If she was discovered by those people, her safety would be at stake. "Don't speak nonsense." Ling Shi gently smiled. "Aunt Jing was willing to suffer so much yearning pain to protect you. How can I let you come with me to risk yourself? Furthermore, you don't have to worry about me. I will act accordingly and will not be rash. I will only be investigating in the dark, and when I have any news, I will come look for you. After all, you will be going to find Aunt Jing in the future as well. You can't be in the dark about everything, right? Therefore, I will go ahead first and see if I can find any information for you." Mu Chen looked at Ling Shi. There was a rare gentleness on her face with a faint smile hanging at the corner of her lips. Her voice was filled with irreversible resolution. Facing Mu Chen's gaze, Ling Shi lightly nodded her head, implying that he should not try to persuade her any further. After looking for a long time, Mu Chen finally gave up and spoke with his teeth clenched. "Refine a spirit seal with your spirit and give it to me. Otherwise, I will definitely not let you go alone." The so-called spirit seal was a small trace of spirit that was made into a spirit seal. This spirit seal would be linked to the owner, and the instant the owner was in danger, there would also be a reaction from the spirit seal as well. However, this spirit seal was, after all, a strand of the spirit. If the spirit seal was destroyed, the owner of it would also suffer injuries from it. So, generally speaking, unless it was someone close, most people wouldn't be willing to give their spirit seals to anyone else. But clearly, Mu Chen and Ling Shi didn't have a normal relationship. Seeing the firmness in Mu Chen's eyes, Ling Shi could only agree to it as she revealed a weak smile from the corner of her lips. "What a stubborn fellow, okay then." She extended her hand as light gathered on her slender fingertips. It flickered with golden light and gradually took the form of a palm-sized golden seal. The golden seal was exquisite and small. It was a small-scaled Ling Shi. Even the cold aura that was emitted from it was similar. "Here, take it." Ling Shi revealed a smile to Mu Chen as she handed over the golden seal. Receiving the golden seal, Mu Chen curiously fiddled with it, before lightly rubbing on the small Ling Shi's face. After that, he saw Ling Shi's face turning red as she glared at him. The spirit seal was linked to her spirit, after all. That rub, and with their distance, she also felt that a little bit. Therefore, this action from the latter was merely teasing her right before her eyes. If it was someone else that did such a disrespectful act, Ling Shi would have long set up a spiritual array to kill him. Cough. Seeing her reaction, Mu Chen dryly coughed as he quickly stored the golden seal. He then said with a heavy expression, "Big Sister Ling Shi, promise me that no matter what happens, do not be rash. I will handle that matter in the future, and at that time, whether it is Mother or Big Sister Ling Shi, I will protect the both of you. Wait until you surpass your Big Sister Ling Shi before speaking such words." Ling Shi smiled. It was a smile that made even 100 flowers pale in comparison. However, Mu Chen's words had also made her somewhat happy in her heart. "Right, even though you are a sovereign now, you can't abandon your cultivation in the ways of spiritual arrays. With your talent, you will probably soon come in contact with the profundity of Spiritual Array Grandmaster. This will also be a powerful card of yours. The danger filled in the Great Thousand World is something that the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy cannot be compared to. So it's still good to have an additional card. Lingxi warned with a stern expression as she looked at Mu Chen. Mu Chen could only smile as he felt the warmth when Lingxi suddenly became naggy. Also, Lingxi's gaze suddenly glanced at Nine Nether, who was indistinctly by the side. The latter had always maintained a calm expression as she stood there and did not come any closer, nor did she have any conversation with Lingxi. Mu Chen did not know why the two ladies didn't seem to like each other too much. It's not impossible to dissolve the blood-link bond. Hearing her words, Nine Nether's brows raised as she coldly looked at Lingxi. Lingxi did not concede, facing Nine Nether's gaze as she indifferently said, "Don't look at me like that, Mu Chen is young and doesn't know anything. Did you think that I'm unaware of anything as well? What are you trying to say?" Nine Nether responded with a cold voice. "Accomplishing evolution at such an age and possessing the undying flames, I believe that you have quite the status, even in the Nine Nether Bird clan, right?" Lingxi sneered. "So what?" Nine Nether raised her chin as she replied. "The Nine Nether Bird clan has always been stubborn and old-fashioned. If you have an important place in the clan, and they were to find out that you conducted a blood-link bond with a human, how enraged will they be? At that time, who knows, they might force Mu Chen to dissolve the blood-link bond one-sidedly, because it fits the personality of your clan, but Mu Chen will also suffer an unimaginable injury this way." Lingxi coldly looked at Nine Nether as she spoke. "No one can dissolve our blood-link bond." Nine Nether looked at Lingxi as she said word for word, "No one can." The two girls looked at each other with a cold gaze as the atmosphere nearly froze. The frozen atmosphere enveloped the entire courtyard, with the two ladies looking at each other with cold gazes. The commotion spread out as it attracted violent whistling winds, causing the trees and leaves to dance in the courtyard. Sana hid behind a big tree as she sneakily looked at the confrontation between Nine Nether and Lingxi. She was afraid to be dragged into it. Looking at this scene, Mu Chen felt a headache, since he didn't understand why these two girls would fight the moment they see each other, and with heavy gunpowder. Anyone can speak good words. If I find out that Mu Chen is injured by the blood-link bond, I will not let you off, even if you are from the Nine Nether Bird clan. Lingxi coldly glanced at Nine Nether as she spoke in an icy voice. "Your tone of speech is pretty big. I want to see what gives you the qualifications to speak such words." Nine Nether raised her brows as she sneered. "Really?" Lingxi's face was cold as starlight flickered and gathered on her slender hand. HMPH. Nine Nether coldly snorted as a cold light flickered in her eyes, and behind her, a large shadow gradually appeared as it covered the earth and sky. "Stop!" However, just when the two girls were about to fight, Mu Chen finally couldn't endure anymore and barked out in anger. He grabbed onto Lingxi's hand as rage rose on his face. "The two of you done messing around?" Lingxi and Nine Nether looked at Mu Chen. However, the latter did not get interrupted by them as he had genuine anger on his face. Initially, his gentle gaze had turned abnormally strict. This was the first time that Lingxi and Nine Nether had seen Mu Chen being enraged. In an instant, the atmosphere weakened as they issued a snort and retracted the spiritual energy fluctuations around them. Mu Chen looked at the two girls that had turned their heads away as he scratched his head. "Big Sister Lingxi, the blood-link bond between Nine Nether and me was formed under a dangerous situation. So there's no way to dissolve this blood-link bond, nor will I do it. After all these years, Nine Nether has helped me a lot, and if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have come this far. No matter what dangers the blood-link bond may bring, I will accept it. As long as Nine Nether doesn't agree, then I will not let anyone dissolve the blood-link bond between us." Mu Chen's voice spread out in the courtyard. Not only was his voice heavy, but there was also an indisputable resolution in it. The ice on Nine Nether and Lingxi's faces had unknowingly melted away. The former shifted her gaze as she looked at the resolute expression on the youth's face, before swiftly shifting her gaze away. Without her notice, her mood was suddenly lightened a lot. Lingxi looked at Mu Chen as she sighed, Since you have already said so much, then I shouldn't say anything further. As she spoke, she suddenly smiled and looked at Mu Chen with a sly gaze, but I never expected small Mu Chen to assume such responsibility, how manly. Mu Chen clenched his teeth as he said, "How am I small? You are only 2 or 3 years older than me." Ling Shi smiled without any comment. She then turned her head to Nine Nether as her tone gradually softened. "I am not picking on you, but you should know my worries. If the Nine Nether Bird clan knows about this matter, I'm afraid that they will not let this matter rest so easily. I have already grown up, not even my father and mother could say anything about my matters. If there are any troubles in the future, I will protect him." Nine Nether said with indifference. Mu Chen couldn't control the twitch on his lips as he interrupted, "I am not interested in depending on a woman." However, Nine Nether did not bother about his protest as she left behind a sentence for them to talk, and walked away with her long legs and left, leaving behind a gorgeous silhouette. What a prideful lady. Mu Chen, looks like it won't be easy for you to subdue that prideful little bird. Ling Shi looked at Nine Nether's silhouette as she smiled. Shortly after, she lazily stretched her arms as her ample curves became even more distinct under the white dress. Mu Chen was helpless. "Stay in my place for the next few days. Don't lag behind in your cultivation of spiritual arrays. Before you leave, I will do my best to impart everything to you." "Okay." Mu Chen smiled as he nodded his head. During the next few days, Mu Chen quietly stayed in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy with Ling Shi in her courtyard most of the time as he cultivated in the ways of spiritual arrays. After he finished cultivating, he would party with those of the Goddess Luo Association. In the past, when he was in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, he spent most of his time cultivating, and now that he is about to leave, he became reluctant to part. He liked everyone from the Goddess Luo Association. There weren't any schemes or plots behind their smiles. In this place, they could disregard their identity as they were all members of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy right here. Perhaps, after entering the Great Thousand World, it would be hard for him to see such smiles anymore. After all, it was no longer a worry-free ivory tower. When night arrived, Mu Chen would sit on the mountain peak by himself as he looked at the sky full of stars. Some time ago, he would have a girl quietly accompanying him. She would rest her head on his shoulders. Mu Chen liked that clinging feeling he felt back then. He had become her world, supporting her. Now that she was no longer around, he could only reminisce about it in his heart. Mu Chen slowly laid on the grass patch as he quietly shut his eyes, and slowly clenched his fist. "Luo Li, wait for me." When Mu Chen quietly stayed in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy for roughly 10 days, he had finally waited for the return of the Northern Sea Dragon. Hearing the news that the Northern Sea Dragon had returned, Mu Chen swiftly rushed to the main hall. Upon arrival, he saw the smile hung on the Northern Sea Dragon's face. Seeing his smile, Mu Chen instantly felt heavily relieved. Among the 5 great academies, Dean Jiansheng of the Saint Spiritual Academy did not agree, as expected, but the 3 other deans agreed to it. So that fellow can't protest anything. Northern Sea Dragon looked at Mu Chen as he spoke with an eye-narrowing smile. At this instant, even with Mu Chen's firm heart, there was a smear of excitement. "When do you want to use the Mirror of Judgment? Can we do it now?" Mu Chen hastily inquired. "Then, let's do it now." The Northern Sea Dragon wasn't unexpected of Mu Chen's haste as he nodded with a smile. Shortly after, he waved his hand and space was torn apart as he strode into it. "Follow me." Mu Chen nodded his head as he immediately followed with Nine Nether behind him. Mu Chen stepped into the spatial crack and the scenery before him changed in an instant. It seemed to be a small space. It wasn't big, except that it was all a void. In this small space, there was an ancient bronze mirror that had the size of roughly a few thousand feet quietly floating before him, emitting an indescribable fluctuation as it quietly rippled, causing the space to be constantly shaking. There was a stone staircase in this space that extended to the Mirror of Judgment. The Northern Sea Dragon led Mu Chen and Nine Nether to it as he passed a bronze seal over to Mu Chen. "By using this item, you will be able to use the Mirror of Judgment. However, you can't make any attacks with it as a divine artifact of such a level isn't something that the current you can use. If you recklessly use it, it will devour you instead. Mu Chen grabbed the bronze seal as he nodded his head. I will leave first. The Northern Sea Dragon smiled, and with a move of his figure, he disappeared. He did not have any intentions of staying here. Although he was curious about Mu Chen's purpose of using the Mirror of Judgment, he did not inquire, since everyone had their own secrets. When the Northern Sea Dragon left, this space became quiet. Mu Chen raised his head as he looked at the huge Mirror of Judgment, then injected his spiritual energy into the bronze seal in his hand. A faint luster shot forth from his hand, into the dusty surface of the Mirror of Judgment. Buzz. Buzz. Fine ripples fluctuated from the surface of the mirror, and the Mirror of Judgment gradually became clear. However, the surface of the mirror was extremely abstruse, as if it was a night sky emitting a mysterious light from it. At the sight of this, Mu Chen deeply inhaled a mouthful of air as he spread his arms out. Light flickered, followed by the appearance of the immortal page. With a flick of his finger, that immortal page flew out and hovered before the Mirror of Judgment. Buzz. Buzz. The surface of the mirror rippled as strands of light started to circulate. A ray of light shot forth and enveloped the immortal page. TSK. TSK. As light enveloped, the Mirror of Judgment suddenly violently trembled, and on the surface of the mirror, the ripples showed signs of losing control. Look at this scene. Mu Chen and Nine Nether's expressions became nervous. The immortal catalogue was indeed terrifying. Even one page of it could cause this Mirror of Judgment to go out of control. Their gazes were firmly fixed on the surface of the Mirror of Judgment, and a few minutes later, it was still pitch black. The current situation made Mu Chen's brows tightly knit together. The immortal catalogue is so terrifying to such an extent that even the Mirror of Judgment could not calculate its trace. Nine Nether sighed. It was indeed worthy of being one of the primal celestial bodies of legends. Mu Chen did not speak as he stared without blinking. Another few minutes passed, and the disappointment in Mu Chen's eyes gradually grew dense, and Nine Nether patted his shoulders to comfort him. However, just when Mu Chen and Nine Nether became thoroughly disappointed, an intense ripple came from the silent mirror's surface as fuzzy images started to appear on the black surface. Mu Chen and Nine Nether's expressions shook as ecstasy flowed from their eyes. It has finally calculated it? Ripples appeared on the surface of the ancient bronze mirror. The initially deep blackness was quickly replaced by fuzzy images. Mu Chen and Nine Nether directed their gazes over. What appeared on the large bronze mirror seemed to be a continent that stretched without end. The angle seemed to be looking from high above as it was continually rising. Mu Chen was blankly at a loss when he looked at that unfamiliar continent. He had no idea where it was. Nine Nether, who stood beside him, was taking a serious look at the mountains and terrains. She slightly furrowed her brows, as if she was pondering something. Scenes still regularly appeared as they formed into a map of a continent in the end. The size of this continent was beyond words. It was shocking down to the heart. Mu Chen could only bitterly smile as he looked at the unfamiliar map. The Great Thousand World was too vast with many continents in it. It wasn't an easy task to be differentiated with just a map. Furthermore, the Mirror of Judgment did not tell them the exact location of the immortal catalogue. Was it trying to get them to search around in the vast continent without any clues? The probability was very terrifying. Just when Mu Chen bitterly smiled, light gathered on the surface of the mirror and vaguely, it turned into an ancient palace. On top of the palace, the sun and moon were hovering as light shone onto the vast continent. Nine Nether was looking at the ancient palace, as well as the sun and moon hovering on top of it. Her figure faintly trembled as dense shock rose in her pupils. The scene did not last for long as it gradually faded. In the end, the surface of the Mirror of Judgment returned to darkness. Even the ray of light that was enveloping the immortal page faded. Mu Chen extended his hand as he retrieved the immortal page and stored it in his body. There's no clue at all. Mu Chen sighed as he spoke. Whether it was the unknown continent or the ancient palace, he had no clues. That might not be the case. Nine Nether, who was looking at the Mirror of Judgment, suddenly smiled. Hearing her words, Mu Chen was stunned for a moment, before looking at Nine Nether. Dense joy rose from his heart. Judging from Nine Nether's words, did she realize something? If I have not guessed incorrectly, the continent that was shown on the Mirror of Judgment should be one of the 10 major continents in the Great Thousand World, the Skylore continent. Nine Nether chuckled. One of the 10 major continents? Skylore continent? Mu Chen muttered. Right now, in the Great Thousand World, the 10 major continents are the most well-known. They can be considered the core regions of the Great Thousand World. They are flourishing and have as many experts as the stars in the sky. Comparing the Northern Heavens continent of your Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy to the Skylore continent, it's not even a firefly in comparison. In the Skylore continent, any single one of the peak forces isn't in any way inferior to the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy. Hearing her words, Mu Chen smacked his lips. Although he knew that the Northern Heavens continent wasn't much in the Great Thousand World, he never thought that it would be to such a degree. After all, the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy could be considered as in control of the entire Northern Heavens continent. However, when it was placed in comparison with the major continents, it was much more inferior. You seem to be very clear about the Skylore continent. Mu Chen was astonished as he looked at Nine Nether. He realized that Nine Nether seemed to be somewhat familiar with the Skylore continent. Do you know where I come from before I failed my tribulations? Nine Nether spoke with an eye-narrowing smile. Mu Chen was stunned as he answered, it can't be the Skylore continent, right? Correct. Nine Nether nodded her head thoughtfully. Then, the Nine Nether bird clan is also in the Skylore continent. Mu Chen asked in astonishment. The Nine Nether bird clan isn't on the Skylore continent. However, back then, when I came out to experience the world, I went to the Skylore continent. Moreover, I still have a territory at that place. Nine Nether's rosy lips rose as she said, showing off. You even established a force. Now, Mu Chen was thoroughly dumbstruck. I did not establish a force, I was only recommended by a senior and joined one of the peak forces. After all, it's impossible to go out without any background, especially in the Skylore continent that has hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Oh? There's a force that could hold you. Mu Chen smiled. Before I underwent my evolution, my strength wasn't even in the sovereign realm. With that pitiful strength of mine, it wasn't even anything in the Skylore continent. The force that I was a part of was called the Great Haven Law Domain. Don't belittle it, it was one of the peak forces in the Skylore continent. The strength of the entire force was only stronger compared to the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, and not weaker. Furthermore, my status in the Great Haven Law Domain was pretty high. Nine Nether chuckled. Your strength was not even at the Sovereign Realm back then, and you became one of the higher ranks. Mu Chen spoke with doubt. Haha, who asked me to have a powerful background? The curve on Nine Nether's lips rose even more distinct. Mu Chen was helpless, so it turns out that she took a backdoor to be in the so-called higher ranks. He shook his head as he looked at the Mirror of Judgment and said, if the Skylore continent was shown in the Mirror of Judgment earlier, then what does that palace with the sun and moon behind it mean? Nine Nether's brows slightly raised as she pondered for a long time, before saying in a slow tone, I have once heard in the Skylore continent that there was an ancient haven palace hidden in the continent. The lord of this ancient haven palace was a supremacy existence that could tremble the earth and sky back then, even heavenly sovereigns could not compete with him so easily. Mu Chen's gaze slightly changed. An existence that not even heavenly sovereigns could compete against. Just how terrifying is that? Legend has it that in the ancient Haven Palace, there is a treasure that even Earth sovereigns and heavenly sovereigns would be tempted to have. However, no one has seen the ancient Haven Palace all these years, thus, it became a legend. Nine Nether's gaze was revolving with thoughts as she continued, if the immortal catalogue is in the ancient Haven Palace, then I believe that this supreme expert was one of the 10 experts that possessed the primal celestial body in ancient times. So much so that he might be the first possessor of the primordial immortal body. Mu Chen's gaze was heavy, since Nine Nether's analysis made sense. Maybe the immortal catalogue was related to this ancient Haven Palace. But shortly after, he felt a headache. Not to mention if this ancient Haven Palace existed, even if it really showed itself, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. It was no different from snatching food from a tiger if he wanted to seize the immortal catalogue under the eyes of so many experts, being very treacherous. But, regardless of anything, now that he had obtained some clue of it, he would definitely not give up so quickly. Looks like it will be our next objective. Mu Chen spoke in a soft voice. To go to the Skylore continent? It is indeed a decent place to train. Nine Nether smiled. Right now, my objective is to get stronger so that I can protect those I want to protect. Furthermore, this Skylore continent is one of the major continents, thus, I believe that it will definitely be more interesting and dangerous compared to the Northern Heavens continent. Mu Chen spoke with a faint smile. The Skylore continent was apparently a decent place. He could train himself and, at the same time, seek more information regarding the ancient Haven Palace. This way, he would be able to make his move first, if opportunity allowed. Clearly, he still had to get stronger before then. Otherwise, even if the ancient Haven Palace did appear without any strength, he wouldn't have any qualifications to seize it. I never thought that we would be returning to the Skylore continent, how reminiscing. Nine Nether sighed. Back then, when she left the Nine Nether Bird clan for the Skylore continent, she fell into the small northern spiritual realm because she was undergoing her tribulations, and with accidents arising from many causes, she formed the blood link bond with Mu Chen. Furthermore, the most coincidental point was that right now, Mu Chen was also heading for that continent. Fate was truly unfathomable. Let's go. When we go to the Skylore continent, I can rely on you. Mu Chen smiled. As long as you say my name, I guarantee that you will be able to run amok anywhere you want in the Skylore continent. Nine Nether spoke with her eyes narrowed from smiling. Mu Chen rolled his eyes and disregarded her. The mighty Great Havenlore domain that was mentioned by Nine Nether was only one of the peak forces. Even if Nine Nether was one of the higher ranks, it was still impossible to run amok in the Skylore continent. Mu Chen turned around as he descended the stone stairs, towards the spatial crack. Although he wasn't able to obtain any accurate news, his harvest was already satisfying. At the very least, he had a rough location and didn't have to blindly roam around. When the two of them walked out of the spatial crack, the spatial ripples had directly appeared in the main hall of the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy. Before them, the Northern Sea Dragon was looking at them, smiling. You done? Mu Chen nodded his head as he returned the bronze seal back to the Northern Sea Dragon as he spoke with sincerity. Thank you, Senior Northern Sea, for your help. The Northern Sea Dragon waved his sleeves, and the spatial crack gradually disappeared. Looking at the youth before him, his gaze turned gentle. You will be leaving very soon. 3 days from now. Mu Chen sucked in a mouthful of air as he spoke, suppressing the reluctance in his heart. The Northern Sea Dragon nodded his head as a smile appeared on his aged face. I am looking forward to hearing your news again. I believe that at that time, you will leave us all in shock. You are the pride of our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. I hope that our prided son will not be buried by the innumerable geniuses of the Great Thousand World. I will do my best. Mu Chen smiled as he turned his head, looking at the lively and familiar academy that was shone by the setting sun. Countless figures were streaking across the horizon as they head to the 4 locations of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Goddess Luo Association. Lightning Territory. Spirit Convergence Array. Spiritual Points Hall. Those familiar locations were gradually dimmed by the golden light and slowly disappeared from his sight. Mu Chen spread his arms out as a smile hung on the corner of his lips. He was reluctant to part with this place, but he was also looking forward to his future path. This was not his destination, it was merely his starting point. Goodbye, Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. This episode ends here. Thanks you for watching.